Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our CC3D workshop. We will be starting module 1.3, cell properties and shape determinants. In the first module of today, James talked a little bit about how a CompuCell works, and we got the chance of playing with a pre-install and pre-written simulation and a few others. On module 1.2, I was more theoretically. I just told you about how CompuCell 3D works, what makes a cell moves, how the cell decides, which behaviors and properties and shapes you have. Today, now for module 1.3, we will be actually building models together, and you will together with me change parameters in the model and see how it behaves live in front of you. Okay. So as a reminder, this workshop is being recorded live right now and being transmitted live to YouTube. So we will be sharing everything that's happening here online on YouTube later. You can also see this class live on YouTube if you want. Okay, so we're going to talk about cell properties and shape determinants. We're going to explore some of those plugins that I have shown you on module 1.2, and we're playing with that and seeing the outcome simulations. Okay, so this will be a very hands-on module for you. Okay, so if you have any questions, please send your message on the chat, and someone in the CompuCell team will try to help you answer your question. Feel free to use the buttons yes, no, go slower, go faster, so we can have an idea of what's if we should increase the pace of the course or go a little bit slower. Okay, and during all the exercises, we'll be doing a quick pull for completion or need more time. Okay, and please fill up when you are done with the exercise, and we are about to move on. Please fill the pull if you need a little bit more time. Okay, right. So all the slides and the exercise will be made available to you as we go to the course. So you should already have a copy of this PowerPoint slide, and you all should have received a copy of all the exercise that we'll be doing here. We'll be constructing the code live in front of you, but you don't necessarily need to do the code yourself. You can already download, pick up the code and open it already ready after you construct it, and then you can play with the code directly. Okay, so you'll be about 4 codes that will be writing. Okay, so Hayden just shared the demo code, can be found in the student materials folder. So it should be already there for you. Okay, so the topics of this module is going to be first motivation, cell shapes, and then I'm going to go over a series of step-by-step exercises. First one is actually creating a basic simulation from scratch. Okay, then we explore the volume constraint, the relation between the volume constraint and the temperature. We already talked about how that plays out before in the module 1.2. Now we're going to see it in your simulation. Then we're going to talk about surface constraint and length constraint. Another very important plugin will be the contact energies, but that will be explored tomorrow, and also a little bit on module 1.4 later today. Okay, so we talk a lot of, we have seen on the previous module and also on module 1.1, when James showed a picture of many cells and tissues. Okay, that is no surprise that cells come with a variety of diversity of shapes, right? So the cells can be the shape. There's not. We usually think of cell as a blob, a kind of circular object, right? That's maybe a little fluffy, And maybe that's a good kind of approximation for the average cell shape. Maybe you can say that most of the cells will look like that, but in reality, cells can be found in a variety of shapes. Okay, they can be round, they can be circular, they can have a donut-like shape, they can even look like a cube, as you see in the epithelial cells that make up an epithelium. They can look like a star, and you have the neurons that very odd shape, the sperm. And here you're seeing a collection of cells with very different cell shapes, and the cells adapt their shape, or they've evolved to differentiate to have a different cell shape based on the functions that they will play out in the body, right? Or what they will be doing, how they will survive. You're talking about a singular cell, right? A monocellular organism, okay? So basically, the cells have two, you can actually subdivide the cells into two basic types of cells, which usually have their own shapes. The first subtype of cell going to be the epithelial cells, with the cells that make up tissues, right? So those cells usually have a more structured shape, so they are either cuboidal or columnar or flat like a pancake. And those epithelium, right, they're made of multiple layers, so each layer can have a different kind of cell shape. So it can be a kind of cuboidal in the bottom, kind of something in transition into a flat squamous shape as you go upper in the layers of the tissue, and that usually happens in our skin and other walls of your organs that are made of epithelium of multiple layers. Okay, so the epithelial cell shapes, they're usually very regular. The cells, they still can have a wide splay of shapes, but usually the shape of the cells stay constant over time. Okay. Then other types of cells that you can be classified in terms of shapes, right, is a mesenchymal. And here you have a much higher variety of cell shapes. The cells can be, they not only have a very rich zoo of shapes, but those shapes are very dynamic. They can be change their shape all the time. Usually, the mesenchymal cells are cells that can move and walk and crawl over a substrate or between other cells in the tissue. So they have a very dynamic shape, usually like a star shape. They can be polar, like they clearly have a front and a back, like in the cell here found the limb mesenchyme that is clearly moving in a same direction. Those cells can also be bipolar. They can have two sides that seems to be moving and or pulling other cells along an axis, or they can be very complex. They just can have this kind of shape and do not exactly know what the cell is doing, but surely is doing many things, right? And then you see that in main organisms, and even single cells that crawl, right? They can also have this kind of shape. They usually unicellular organisms is can be classified as mesenchymal type of cell. Okay, so we can use CompCell to actually try to regulate the shape of the cells that you are modeling. And there are many tools for us that we can use to make the cells to be look more like epithelial cells or more like mesenchymal cells. Okay, and we're going to be exploring that. So today. So here now we're going to go to our step-by-step exercises. And the first one that we're going to do is we'll create a basic simulation where you can create a single cell, and we're going to explore how each one of those energy constraints or property constraints can influence the shape of the cell, and what happens if you change one or parameter to be higher or lower. Okay, so as a reminder, we are gonna go out of my presentation mode here, and I'm gonna create a cell on live in front of you. Those instructions are also on the slides, and if you're, I'll go quite fast, okay, just for the sake of time, but do not worry, because there is a file called 1.3 1a.zip, which you can download from student materials and open, and you already have the configuration file that will be used for our first exercise ready for you to open up on Compsel 3D, and you can play from there, okay? So you can either just watch me as I do the exercise or follow along with the slides that you have a copy, or you can do it together with me as I do here on the screen. You can also open your desktop or Nanotube Compsel, Nanocube Compsel, and try to replicate what I'm doing on my screen together with me. Okay, so right now I will stop share. Oh, sorry, that's not exactly what I want to do. What I want to is to start the presentation. And what you're gonna do now, we're gonna create a new Compsel 3D project. So for those that want to do this exercise of creating a base Compsel 3D example from scratch, I'll ask you to open TweetIt. Okay, you can open from the terminal, or you can right-click on the menu on your computer. And when you open TweetIt, you should get something that looks like this. Okay, you see empty editor with nothing inside. All right. So what I want to do now, I want to go into the menu here. Okay, so in Mac, the menu stays here on the top of the screen. On Windows, will be together with the window of TweetIt. And I want to go now to Compsel 3D project and select new Compsel 3D project. Okay, so this means that you're going to create a new Compsel 3D simulation from scratch. And when you click menu Compsel project, new Compsel 3D project, click there, what you receive in front of you is a splash screen of the wizard that's going to help you, assist you to create your Compsel 3D project. So here you can specify a name for it. Okay, so and you can also specify where in your computer this simulation will be stored. In my case, it's going to be in this particular folder in my computer. Okay, Compsel 3D 2023 workshop. And I have to first task that I have to do is I have to assign a name for my for my simulation. Okay, and the name I'll give my simulation will be module 1_3 and cell shapes. Okay, so that's going to be the name of my Compsel 3D project. So when you're giving a name here, and also when you give a name to cells later, it's very important that you obey some kind of basic best practice. Okay, first, do not start the name with a number. Okay, do not start with a space. Do not have spaces on the name of a project or the name of cells. Spaces are going to cause you problems later. So it should be a single name. If you don't have some kind of spacing between the names, you just use an underscore. It's better if you do not use dots, okay, points or exclamation points. It's better to be simple. Okay, so in this case, is module 1_3_ cell shapes. Okay, this way you'll be is a safe name for you to use. Okay, so module 1_3 cell shapes. Okay, and here on the bottom you have a simulation type. Okay, is already selected Python plus XML. Leave that as it is. I'm going to explain what those things mean later on the course. So here's the wizard. You give the name of your simulation, let it select Python XML, and then you hit continue. And you're going to go to the next splash screen of the Compsel wizard assistant that you're going to ask you what you want to have in your Compsel 3D simulation. So if everybody is following me, I'm just going to hit continue. And now I get another splash screen, okay? And it's asking about what I want to have on my simulation, okay? So I can specify the simulation dimension. So this is the X, Y, and Z dimensions of my simulation. Right now it's pre-filled with 256 for each one. And you notice that from the Z, you just have one. So this means that you're dealing with our two-dimensional simulations. So the first thing I want you to do here is to change those 256 to 100, okay, to make it a smaller simulation. So our simulation will be 100 by 100, okay? So 100 for X, 100 for Y. Let's leave one for the Z because we don't want to do a three-dimensional simulations. Okay. Now here, there's the boundary conditions. You can specify the boundary conditions. Let's just leave no flux here. We're not going to change that for the moment. And actually, that is everything that you want to do for this part. Okay, we're just having a 100 by 100 simulation space on the XY plane. Here you can see already that you have the option to make your simulation instead of using Cartesian lattice, you can use hexagonal lattice. Let's leave it square, okay? Here, this average memory fluctuation is the temperature, the noise level of our system. This is the number of time steps that you're going to run your simulation. And this is how you're going to, this initial cell layout is different options for you to make your cells. We're going to leave rectangular slab, square, and everything as it is. Don't change anything. The only thing I want you to change is to be on X and Y to be 100. So hopefully everyone is following me. I'm going to hit continue. And now I get another splash screen that asks you what the cell types I want to have in my simulation. Okay. So here, this list is empty. The only thing that you already have in your simulation is the medium or the black background that you have in every computer simulation. So every computer simulation will have the black empty space in the background as default, okay? So, and we call this black empty space the medium, right? Is a kind of special kind of cell that has no properties, all right? So the one thing you have to do now, you're gonna add cells to this, okay? So here we have to go here on the bottom and give the name of the cell. The cell can be whatever name you want it to have. In my case, I'm gonna just, because I don't have many, I don't know what name to give myself. I'm just gonna call it test cell, okay? And again, when you give the name to your cell, don't start with a number and don't have spaces, okay? Because this will be turned out into a variable in your code later, and if you have space, then you're gonna do these two variables, and then you start having problems, okay? So just give a single name, continuous, right? And avoid adding special characters. You may get into problems if you do that. So just use letters here, okay, and no spaces. So just gonna write test cell. And what you have to do here, and you have to be careful, is that just write the name of the cell here is not enough. You have to write the name of the cell and then hit the add button here. Only after you hit the add button is that your cell actually made into the list of cells that you'll be simulating. Okay, so we have to write the name of the cell and add it. If you accidentally added more cell than you wanted, you can click here, clear table. It's gonna erase the table from the cells, and then you can add your cell again. So we're gonna do this again. Test cell, that will be the name of my cell type. It can be whatever name you want. If you can put your name there, it can be, if your cell, call your cell Bob or Joanna, you can do that, okay? But here in my case, I'm gonna just write test cell, add, is on the list. I'm all good, I can hit continue. Okay. If you hit continue and you forgot to add a cell, you can also click here to go back, and then you go back to the screen that you had before. My cell is there, I'm good, continue, I go to next screen. Now he asks you to specify chemical fields that you want to have in your simulation. So if you want to add something like FGF or BMP signaling or wind gradient or whatever, this is where you add those gradients, okay? But you'll not be doing that today. That's going to be later for in the next 2 days. We're going to do this. Right now, we just want to say we don't want any chemical fields. So we're going to just hit continue and continue my simulation. And now, this is the last splash screen that you have in your wizard. And this is the most important one, because here's where you can specify all the plugins and properties that you want to assign to your cells. Okay, so cell properties and behaviors. So here you already come with some a little bit of pre-filled thing. The only thing that you have is that your simulation is going to track the center of mass of the cells. Okay, so center of mass is here. But here, because we're going to explore many plugins or many energy terms and many constraints that are going to give properties of the cells, you actually want to select many of them. So what you select here is from the first, you select will be contact, then volume flex, then surface flex, and then length constraints. If your splash screen right come with cell neighbors, that's completely fine. You can just leave that. This is not really a property that you give to the cell. It's just a way to track or monitor what the cells are doing. Okay, so you can leave the cell neighbors there if you want, no problem. You can just relax. What's really important is that this first one here is the contact energy of the cells, and the volume, the surface, and the length. Okay, these are the ones that you definitely want to have here. Okay, so make sure you select contact, volume flex, surface flex, and length constraint. Okay, we'll be talking, you may have seen that, okay, you also have this local flex. What it means? Wait, let's explore this first, and we're going to talk about all those things later in the course. Okay, be patient. So you have now those 4 here, which are the most important. Here's everything's optional. Leave like that, and then when you're done, you just hit continue. And yes, congratulations, your configuration is complete. Okay, this means that you have actually created a basic template for your simulation. You hit done, and when you hit done, you look, you're back on Tweeted, and it seems that nothing happened, but actually you may notice that on the Constraint 3D project panel, there's a little thing called module 1.3 cell shapes. Okay. And then if you right click here or double click here 2 times, you can expand, and then you see all the files that you have just created for your simulation. Very quickly, the difference between surface flex and surface local flex is that the local one allows you to spice a different surface parameter for all the cells of the same type, while the surface flex only allows a single parameter for all the cells of the same type. So briefly, that's what the difference is. But we don't have to worry about that at the moment. Okay. So, good. Now, now you have here your simulation. Okay, so on the top, say the full path of simulation, and you create those 3 cell configurations. Okay, and if you want to run your simulation now, you can right click here and select open in player, or you can just leave it here. This is not working. Okay. Okay, you right click here and click select open in player, and that's gonna, from this, you can make the simulation. This will open the player in your the Constraint 3D player computer. I think this is disabled because the play is not actually open. So just do here, left click here or double click here, you're on a Mac, and click open in player, and then you get CompCell to play here, okay? And you should get something that looks like this, okay? You create a bunch of cells that are kind of elongated and forming a blob like that. Okay, now it's time to check if you got this, okay? And once you have so again, you right click here and you select open in player, and then you're gonna open the CompCell 3D, this simulation, and you should see something that looks like this. Okay, so some of you didn't see boundaries in cells, okay? If you didn't see a boundary, you can specify the cell properties here. On the player, you have this button with the tools. You click here, and then you can select here the color of the boundary of the cells. So here I made my cell boundary white. Okay, you select white, click OK. If you want to change the color, you click here. You should get something here that lets you select the color. Okay, then you can choose from here, 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 or from the crayon here. You select and hit OK. Okay, and then you can hit OK here, and then you should see the color, the boundary. If you still don't see the boundary, you go here to the menu visualization and make sure that your cell and cell borders are selected. Okay. If I unselect here, I will not see the boundary of the cells. That's not very useful. I want to see the boundary of the cells, so I go here and make sure it's selected, and then you have the selection. Is there a way to change those creations in the code? The visualization configuration from the code is not possible to change. But when you create CompCell, there is a whatever you do here on the player and you save, okay, you'll be safe for the next time you open the simulation. Because CompCell creates a SQLite support file together with your other files, configuration files, which have all the properties of the cells in terms of what will be the colors of the cells, what will be the wherever the bonds are on or off, what colors they are, and so on. So all this is saved. So for the next time you open the same simulation, if you set your cells to be pink, the next time you open that simulation, the cells will be pink as well. But no, there's no way to put that on the code itself. All right, so James already explained here, in CompCell Play, you have those buttons here. The first is play, the other is step, pause, and stop, okay? If you hit pause, the simulation just pauses momentarily, and then you can hit play again, and gonna resume play, run simulation. This one is the step. If you hit here, you see that it paused simulation, but if you hit again, it evolves simulation just a little bit. Okay, so I'll make this window a little bit bigger for you to see. Every time I hit this, you see that the step here is increasing and the cells evolve their shapes. So if I keep clicking here, it looks like that it's playing. Okay, so this is for you to step through the simulation. Yeah, the square is the scatter grid. So if you look here closely, you see that the cells are made up of square sites. Okay, because the cell is made of multiple lattice sites, then they have this other shape that's not necessarily square. It can be round. In this case, they're a little bit more elongated. Then I can zoom out, okay? And you can play here to move like this, okay? So if you click here on this button with configuration, there are many options that you can choose to from to make your simulation look whatever you want to use. In what case you want to use hexagonal shapes then? Well, we can discuss that later. Okay, but it's something that you can choose in the wizard, allows you to use hexagonal lattice. Okay, so I'm gonna close here, okay? And I think what I'm gonna do now is I'll go back to my slides, okay? And again, if you didn't follow all the instructions on that I just did here in front of you, you can directly get the code that we have here by looking at the 1.3.1a.zip file. If you open that file, you already have the Constraint 3D simulation right there, which you can open and run simulation direct from there. Okay. So when you run simulation, what you get is this kind of thing. And what you may notice that when you go back to the player itself, to the tweeted, you see it here that you have 3 cell files, okay? You have some cell shapes Python, cell shapes XML, and cell shapes step. What's that? Let's open here. Steppables.py, okay? So let me explain what each one of those do, okay? So brief overview of the simulation files, okay? Your Constraint 3D simulation is always made up of those 3 base files, okay? 2 Python files and 1 XML file. And you should also see the same thing happening in your folder. If you go to the folder where you create your simulation, you also see that you have those 3 files appear there, okay? And this is the settings SQLite file, which has all the information about the colors of our cells and the boundaries, okay? And the size of the screen, everything else. So yours, the Constraint 3D simulation is made up of those 3 files, okay? What do they do? Okay, let's go first with the XML, okay? So the XML file is the file where you have, well, it's written as an XML, okay, structure, and it has all the properties that you call Constraint to have. Okay, I want to have this many cells, okay? So here's a list of all the cell types. For example, there's a plugin called cell type where you list all the cells that you want to have in simulation. Remember, medium is always there. And what we did in the wizard, we add the test cell as a cell type. So you'll see reflected here. Later in the wizard, we select the cell to have a volume constraint, a surface constraint, center of mass tracker, right? Contact energy constraint. So all these appear here in the XML. So the XML is the place where you call all those built-in plugins that Constraint already has, okay? And you modify them to affect the cells that you want to have simulation and the properties that you want those cells to have. For example, my test cell will have, okay, we don't see here the target volume, but it has a lambda volume this. So here you call those things and specify those parameters, right? So all this can be added from the 3D editor to change what the cells will behave later, right? Yeah, there is a way to specify the niche configuration. That could be the next thing I'm gonna do right after this. Okay, so this is the XML. So the XML allows to call all the already built-in code and all the built-in capabilities that Constraint has for you. Okay, so you basically call everything here. It's kind of from the menu of everything that the cell can do. You can call. I want this with this numbers. I want that with these numbers. So that's what everything you have to do. Can do. So that's XML have, but when you and sometimes just calling the built-in functions in Constraint is already enough for you. Okay, it already has everything that you want your cells need to, okay? But many times when you are making a more complex simulation or a simulation that is very specific for your system, maybe our list of pre-built functions is not enough for you to actually achieve your goals when you're doing your Constraint simulation. So in this case, for those cases, we actually have those Python files. Those Python files that you see here, the main Python file, step of Python file is where you can write your own plugins for Constraint, or your own add your own sub properties, okay, or your own set of sub behaviors that you make your simulation very unique to your case. So the Python files is where you actually build up these custom functions, okay. And you also always have two Python files. The first one, so these are here. The first one is the main Python file, okay. This is where you call all the functions that you create. Okay, so it's just a place where you call functions, okay, from other files, and then you just you're gonna import this step over here, and then you're gonna call this function with this frequency every multiple step or every 2 multiple steps, and you can even pass some kind of numbers to it to do specific things. You can parameterize these functions. This you are gonna learn later. So this main Python files, you only have the calls to those functions. You actually define those functions on the steppable file, where it's made of many kind of Python classes, okay? And we call this class compile the steppables, okay? So here you have module 1.3 steppable, all right? We have initialization steppable, start, step, finish function. So this is the place where you can write your own custom code in the Python language that you can add to your simulations. Okay, today we will not be working on that, but just explain that yes, you can write your own code here at the Python level, and this is where you do it. Okay, so you have a class for each one of those steppable. So the steppable will be the user built-in functions that you want your cells to behave this way, or make some kind of if statement. If the cell sees this much other cells, the cell should change type. So this kind of things you do here on the Python level. You also use the Python level coding to make your cells grow and divide and differentiate. That's where you do all this fun stuff, okay? So here you define different classes, each class or each steppable to do a specific task, okay? And then on the main Python file is the ones that you're gonna actually be calling and using your system. Okay, so this is the brief overview of your cell types that make up your simulation, right? For today, you're gonna only be playing with the XML file. The Python exercise will be done maybe tomorrow or the next day. Definitely, you'll be doing a lot of coding the XML level in the next week. All right. So after this brief review, we go back to our simulations. So remember that I said that we want to explore how those plugins, volume plugin, surface plugin, length constraint plugin affect the cell shape. Right now, all those plugins are turned on, okay? So there are a lot of things going on. So this is a complex simulation already because you have many factors affecting it. And the other problem is that you have a simulation of multiple cells. Instead of having a single cell, you're having lots of cells appearing at this right at the beginning, okay? So what you're gonna do next, you're gonna change the code to have just one cell instead of have multiple cells, okay? So the way you do this now, we're gonna do another exercise in model building. In this case, actually, it will not be model building, it's gonna be model modification. So what I want to do now, we want you to go back to tweet it, okay? Select the XML, right-click on the XML so you can open that and see it on Tweedit. And then what you want to do, you want to scroll all the way down, one of the last functions that we call in CompCell, which is called the uniform initializer. The uniform initializer is basically a function in CompCell that lays out the initial configuration of our cells. And it basically draws a square region where you fill up with all cells in that square region, okay? So the code for that is that there's a box minimum and box maximum. The box minimum is going to be this bottom left corner of your drawing box, and the box maximum will be the coordinates of a top right corner of your box. And then those 2 points define a rectangular region on your space, okay? So here has coordinates 20, 20, and here has coordinates 80, 80. Okay, my box was not drawn very well here. And then you say that you're gonna fill the space with cells which are 7 by 7 lattice sites in dimension. So your cells will have 49 lattice sites as their initial volume, okay? And you're gonna fill up the space with test cells. So in the case where you have multiple cell types, you can specify all cell types you want to put inside this box, okay? And you can actually call this kind of region tag here multiple times, so you can have multiple boxes, each one with a different mixture of cells, okay, and of different types. So right now we are writing a box size that's quite big, right? Which is 60 by 60. We want you to reduce this box size to be a smaller space, and let's make it to be 20 by 20. So we want to change those coordinates to this one to be 40, 40, and this other one to be a 60, 60. Okay, so that's gonna make a much smaller initial layout configuration. So you're gonna fit less cells there, okay? The problem is that you're gonna still fit in a lot of cells inside there. You only want to do one single cell. So the next thing you want to do after you change these coordinates is to actually change the size of the cell that you wanna draw inside that box. So here, our cells are 7 by 7. What I want to do now is change this parameter here to be 20. So you completely fill the space of the box. Okay. So you go there and write 20, and now you have a situation where you have a 20 by 20 initial layout space, and you're gonna fill that with one big cell, which of size 20 lattice sites by 20 lattice sites. Okay. So once you do that, you have to save your simulation, of course. You have to either click on your disk here to save it, okay? So, or you get to File, menus, File, Save, or you just hit Ctrl S or Command S directly on the computer, and you're gonna save the modifications that you did on your onto it. You can tell if your file is saved or not, because as soon as you make any modification to your file onto it, this little icon here becomes red, and once you save it, it becomes blue again. So that's telling you that you actually save, and when next time you open CompCell and run simulation, you're actually going to see the changes here. If you did your change, run simulation, and nothing happens, maybe you forgot to save your simulation. So let me just stop here, and let me try to do this right in front of you here again. So again, what I'm going to do, I'm going to right click on Shapes XML. Well, there's a one width of cell in the Z direction, okay? So that's from 0 to 1, okay? Otherwise, it's just a way to specify in 2D. Is you basically the 2D simulation is where you only have one layer of cell in the Z direction, so you set the coordinates to be from 0 to 1. So that just specifies one cell layer in the Z. Yeah. I guess the question was, why is not from 0 to 0? Okay, yeah, it's from 0 to 1. Not sure what happens if you try to make 0 to 0. maybe nothing will happen, or maybe it will just work fine. Okay. But anyway, I want to now redo those changes here. So I'm in the tweeted. I right-click on XML. So now we appear the XML. So I'm going to go scroll all the way down. I'm going to change here to 40, 40, here 60, 60. And so I reduce my box size where I draw my cells. And then I replace this by 7, instead of having many cells of 7 by 7, now have just a single cell of 20 by 20 lattice sites. And then you notice that is red here. So if I click here on this button, I saved. Okay, so now my simulation is saved. So if I go back to the player and play it again, I have to stop. And then I hit play. Okay, let me do this again in step. Here is my initial cell. Now it's on 40 by 40, okay, up to 6 by 60. So my drawing region is 20 by 20 lattice sites, and I put a cell of exactly 20 by 20 sites, so I get a single cell here at the beginning. Okay. So if I have this and I play my simulation, or you play simulation on computer, you may see something like that, that there have some lattice site flips. And what's going on? Tell me in the chat. Stop, play again. The cell quickly shrinks, right? And have this funny shape. Why is that happening? Yes, it's guaranteed target volume, right? We initialize the cell to start very big, right? But our volume constraint is still set for the cell to be 7 by 7, okay? And okay, and Lampros, I also point out that besides the volume constraint, what else we have? We also have the surface constraint and the length constraint. We have all these constraints going on there, okay? So let me pause here, okay? So it's still a complex simulation because you still have all those constraints appearing now at the same time, okay? So we did change the initial arrangement of cells, so we started with a single cell, but it quickly goes back to a single cell, okay? It happens very quickly, so you want to see this cell shrinking. It is better for you to use the step function, so you can see step by step, so shrinking to space, okay? And the cell does not look round, still look very differently, okay? Because all the plugins are turned on at the same time. At the beginning is a perfect square. The problem is that when you just start simulation, you already have some lattice site flips already happen. So that's why you don't see a perfect square right at the beginning. So I'm answering the question from Cayenne. Okay. So yeah, so the same thing happened here. Is not really a perfect square because some spin fields already happen. Okay. So you're not really looking at time 0, you're looking at real time 1 there. So what you have to do next, okay? You want to turn off the plugins, okay? So when we use the wizard, right, on the last screen, you're asking which property you want to have in your simulation. We select contact, volume, surface, and length constraint. You will select 4 plugins or 4 that gives a property to the cells, okay? So, so those first 3 plugins, right, are already described on section 1.2. We have the volume plugin, the surface plugin, the length plugin, and they are written in terms of this kind of Hookean law, right? You have the strain of this property times the square of the difference between the current property that the cell has minus the target value of that property that you want your cell to have, okay? So, and then as the cell moves and change shapes, okay, it's trying to bring the cell close or stay relatively close to this target value or this ideal parameter, depending on how strong you set this parameter to behave, okay, to be, okay? So, okay, so the volume plugin, the surface plugin, and the length plugin, right, or the aspect ratio plugin, I should call, all have this shape. So you have a target property, and then any deviation here is analyzed with the square of it. So it behaves like this, okay? The only one that does not behaves like that is the contact energy plugin. That one does something a little bit different, which we'll be exploring tomorrow on module 2.2, okay? But so what we want to do now, instead of having all these plugins turned on right at the beginning of the cell, we want to just explore the effects of each one at a time. So what you're going to do now, you want to explore the effects of the volume plugin, okay? So what you're going to do is turn off the other plugin, so you can have only the volume plugin on your simulation. So what you, before explore the effects of volume constraint or the volume plugin, I want you to go to your code and turn off the surface plugin and turn off the length constraint plugin. And the way that you turn off those plugins is you can, well, there are two ways. The first one, you can just select, find the code where you call this plugin and delete the code or comment. But I don't want you to do that. What I want you to do instead, I want you to set the lambda of that plugin to be 0, because that's the same thing as saying that the plugin have no weight in our energy calculations. Okay. Okay. So you go. I want to go back to your code on the surface, set lambda surface to 0, and then set the lambda length also to 0, and this way you turn off those two plugins, okay? And then you can save your simulation and open and play and see what happens, okay? So I'm gonna do this now live in front of you. So here my simulation that's running, stop, play. If I just step through, there's the initial configuration of my cells, then it's shrinking, okay? So that's what's going on at the moment. Let me stop here. Let me go back to tweet it. Click on XML. And now let's find the surface plugin is right here on line 31. It is turned on. All the plugins that you select at the beginning are always turned on when you start simulation. So I want to go back here and set this to 0. So when I set the lambda surface to 0, I'm effectively turning off that plugin, okay? And then I want to find the length constraint plugin that is on line 48. Oops. And here do the same thing. I go to the lambda or the strength of the plugin and set it to 0. And this way I turn off those two plugins, and they next time run simulation, you will not see the effects of those plugins. Okay, so you turn this one off here on line 32, this other off on line 54, setting them to 0. Don't forget to save your simulation. You save. And then what you do, you go back and you play the simulation. Okay. And now if you play the simulation, what you have this. Okay. So do you notice any difference between this simulation here and what you had before? There's more surface area. Okay, someone said. More symmetric, yeah, definitely, because you don't have the length constraint. And less chaotic, someone said, because you also don't have the surface constraint. Okay. And the cell just is keeping its shape, so it's conserving its volume, it's conserving its integrity, and just moving around because the spin, the side flips, move the area. So it's doing what is done. Right now, the only thing that the cells have is some kind of contact energy with the medium, with the black space around it, and is conserving its volume, right? So let me go back to my slide. So here, before you have a cell that was trying to satisfy multiple constraints at the same time, and CompCell does not necessarily come already with the the best choice of parameters for your simulations, okay? And then we turn off two of those plugins, so now only the volume plugin is relevant, and now the cell actually behaves, looks a little bit more isotropic, a little bit more smooth, okay? So, but the cell is still shrinking, right? And the reason the cell shrinks is because even though we make the cell to start very big, the target volume that the cell has still is smaller, is 50 instead of 20 by 20, right? So what the first thing you want to do now is let's make the cell to be very big. And it's better to explore the effect of these plugins in a bigger cell, because then you can see better what do they do to the cell. So what I want to do now is to find where I specify the target volume on our XML code and change that to be, instead of from 50, to be 20 by 20 or 400 lattice sites. What was the boundary condition? You may have noted the cell kind of stick to the boundary. The boundary condition was no flux, and by definition, the cell has no interaction or have a zero interaction energy, everything that's beyond the boundary. So that makes the cell to really like to stick to the boundary. Okay. So we can talk a little bit more about that later. But you can also change about the condition to be periodic, for example. So if the cell goes around here, it reappears on the other side. And it wanders off the top, it reappears in the bottom. That's something that you can also specify on XML code. Okay. So what I want to do now is to fix that, find the volume constraint, volume plugin on XML code, and change that value from 50 to 400 lattice sites, which would be the corresponding 20 by 20. So let's try to do this right now. I'm gonna stop here, go back to my code. I want to find where my volume plugin is, and it should be right here on line 27. And let's leave the lambda volume to be 2. And here I have 50. Instead of 50, I want to be, maybe I have to make it a little bit, just occurred to me that I may, I should make this a little bit bigger for you guys to see it better. And here instead I have 50, I want to make my cell volume to be 400. Okay, so do this 400, save your simulation, clicking here or clicking file, save. Okay, go back to the player and let's stop here. Okay, it starts as a square. Let me hit play. And now my cell actually does not shrink, but it does round up. Okay. So let me know if all of you got this. Okay. So what's actually the length surface of the cell? Okay, here you have a target surface of 50 and a length target length of 25, but they don't matter anymore because you turn off the weight of those two plugins. So they are not at play here right now. Okay, so we're going to explore those two right after. Okay, so if you just wait a few minutes, you're going to explore first the effects of lambda and then the effects of the length constraint. Okay. So someone thought that this is adorable, and I agree. I agree with you. It's an adorable song, right? So this time now the cells, you should have something that looks like this, similar. If you don't have, please ask help in the chat. And now what I want you to do is now I want you to try to change this on your code. So go back to your code and make the target volume bigger or smaller, right? And also try to making the target volume to be 0, very close to 0, and see what happens to your cell. So we're going to give you now 2 minutes for you to play, make change to your target volume, on the target volume, and see if you can make bigger cells or smaller cells, okay? So now is with you. Answering the question from Shilai on the uniform initializer, you have those coordinates that specify the region that you're going to draw the cells, and the width is going to be the size of the cells that you draw inside that region. Okay, so if you draw a region that was 20 by 20 lattice sites, and specify your cell width to be 20 by 20. Okay, so if you change that to be the width instead of 20 to be 10, then you're actually going to fit 4 cells inside that space. So it sets basically the initial size of the cell that you draw on your space. Okay, so did everybody got bigger and smaller cells if they change the target volume? Oh, Serena found something interesting, okay? It has a minimum volume before it dies and disappears. Okay, so yeah, if you set the target volume to 0, the cell disappears. But you may have noticed that if you set the target volume very close to 0, like 5 or 10, it also disappears, right? So there's a minimum volume that you can set that before the cell actually disappears from your simulation, right? So if you make the target volume 30, you're still safe, the cell stays there. But if you go to values below that, it actually disappears. And you're going to be talking about the reasons for that tomorrow, okay? 500 comes out the same size as 200. Maybe the difference is too small for you to appreciate there. Try to make 1,000 or 1,500, and you should definitely see a difference. Well, your whole simulation space is 10,000 lattice sites, so you should be able to go up to there. But definitely when I did simulation, there's a clear difference between 400 and 1,000. Okay. Yeah, okay, you saw different. It's because for 400 to 500, if you did separately, you cannot readily appreciate. It's a little bit hard to distinguish visually. But it's there, I promise. Okay. So, so if you know that if you set the target value to be 0, what happens to the cell? The cell disappears. Okay. So this is a way if you want to kill a cell in Constraint, let's say the cell receives is this kind of environment, something happened in the history of the cell, and you want the cell to die. Okay, you set this target volume to 0, and then the cell gonna shrink and disappear. So that's a recipe to make your cells to disappear. Okay. If the cell only has volume constraint, there's a way to do it. If your cell has many constraints, just set the volume to 0 will not be enough to make it happen, because you have also to change the outer constraints, maybe prevent the cell from disappearing. What helps the surface and volume constraints consistent? You get funny stuff happening. Okay, you'll be seeing that shortly. Right. Okay. So let's now move on, and now let's explore the effects of change the lambda volume or the strain of the constraint. So what I want you to do next is go back to your code, set the target volume to 1,000, okay? Okay, yeah, so if you set the target volume to 1,000, you should see this, a cell that becomes very big, right? But it still kind of moves around. That's exactly what you have seen before. But what I want to do now is I want to change the lambda volume of the cell from 2 to 100. So right now the lambda volume is 2. I want to make it that around 100. So make a target volume of the cell 1,000. Play, see what happens. You should see a big cell like you see here. And this big cell should be there and should be kind of moving around a little bit, right? Because the spin flips. Now I want you to do is want to do keep the target volume of the cell to be 1,000 lattice sites, and change the lambda volume from 2 to 100 and see what happens. Just first do that, think what should happen, then run simulation and see if what you see in simulation is exactly what you expected to see. Okay, Tamagno, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, saying that he got a static cell, right? So who else got the same kind of phenotype? Serena. Changes very slowly, Sharon got it. Okay, yeah, well, Tamagno said that it's mostly static, not completely static, okay? Is this something that you expect to happen or not? Angelique also got the same thing. So does this make sense? Any answer? Yes, right resistance to change. Yes. So let me and that's exactly right. So if you do the simulation, let me try to do this here right now. So I have the formula. I change that to 1,000. Okay, save. If I play simulation, the cell increase, right? So if you see here, the cell is growing because you want to quickly go to 1,000. Once you reach 1,000, start to round up, right? And it's there, okay, and it's happy. Now, if I do this again, but I change my lambda from 2 to 100, and let's repeat it again. Stop simulation, play. What do I get? Oh, I didn't save. See the red button here? Okay, let me save the file first. Save, okay. Now let me do it again. Stop, play. It grows it grows faster than before, okay? And it kind of gets stuck in a very weird shape that takes a very long time to relax, okay? Yes, exactly. Julio's also right. Julio, I do not know how to pronounce your name. It gets target volume and then the way that you accept spin flips, because every spin flip has have very high changing energy, right? It makes very hard for it to accept. Okay. Julio. Okay. So this is what's happening. So what's going on is that now what you had before is that your energy constraint when you have the lambda 2 was something like this, was very kind of smooth. So your cell was allowed to change, to have a wide range of deviations from its target volume. But once you set your lambda volume from 2 to 100, you make that well of energy much more steep. So any kind of pixel away from the ideal pixel that you have, so sorry, let's side off from the ideal volume in lattice sites is highly parallelized, so your cell becomes mostly static. Okay? So if you change that from 100 to 1,000, you're going to effectively freeze the cell. Okay, and that will happen. Okay, and actually, this is a recipe for you to penalize or to freeze the cells in ComputerCell3D. So if you have a cell that you want to behave like a wall of cells that do not move, or it acts as a barrier to other cells, or a cell that for some reason differentiates to something else, and it should fix its shape, okay? A way to do this is you just set the lambda volume to be really high, to be 1,000, 10,000, okay, 1,000,000, and then what happens is that the cell will reject any spin flips once it has reached its target volume, and then it is effectively frozen in your simulation. Yes, Sharon, you're correct. Because you set the lambda to be very high, initially the cell is smaller than it should be, so you move here super fast. Okay, basically every spin flip that is increasing its volume is accepted. Okay, so it reaches its target volume very fast. Okay, and that's why you have this very rough shape at the beginning. But then once it's there, it takes a very long time to relax the surface, because to relax the surface, you have to accept some lattice sites, lattice copy attempts that will be increasing its energy, and that's less likely to happen. So the whole thing is slowed down. You need lots of attempts before your random number actually gives out an output that actually going to accept that lattice site flip. Yeah, you can see it using the step function. Yeah, bigger energy, bigger resistance to change once you are on the target. If you're away from the target, your target property value, then it goes there very quickly. But once it reaches there, it have a very big resistance to change that. Exactly, Jonathan, you're exactly right. Okay, so it basically every when you change your energy, you're not changing energy in this region, where you change energy all the way here. So it's much hard for you to accept that lattice side flips that evolve the cell shape. Okay, so in a self-simulation, if you want to kill the cell, you set its target volume, and now the target property to 0, and then it kills the cell. If you want to kill the cell fast, you set the target properties out to 0 and make a very big lambda. And you want to freeze the cell, you just make your lambda to be very high. Then once the cell reaches that target property, it stops moving, and then you get a frozen cell. Okay, so of course, all this depends not only on the energy that you, or the value that you give your lambda for that property, but also with respect to the lambda with respect to the noise level of your simulation, okay? So if you leave your lambda volume to be 100, but then you increase your temperature or noise level from 10 to 100, you should more or less recover the same behavior that you had before, okay? Because what matters here in this acceptance function, when you have a higher than 0 change in energy, is the range between how much you're changing your energy from your spin, your side flip, with respect to the level of noise in your simulation. So if you have a lambda volume of 100 and level of noise or temperature to be 10, okay, that's a very high ratio. But if you do now change the temperature of simulation from 10 to 100, okay, you may recover the same behavior that you had before. Okay. So what I want you to do now is do exactly that. Leave the target volume of the cell to be 1,000, the lambda volume to be 100, and now go to line 16, where you have the temperature of your simulation, and change from 10 to 100, and tell me if that recovers the same behavior that you had before. So you can do a simulation first with the lambda volume 10 and temperature 10, and do a simulation again with lambda volume 100 and temperature 100. So will those two simulations be exactly the same or not? So do you get the same result or not? And Sharon said that she didn't get the same result. Why is that, Sharon? Siren also didn't get the same result. And I can tell you they're doing nothing wrong. You're not supposed to get the same result. Now the question is why you're not getting the same result. I'll tell you that the logic here is correct, okay? You should, but you don't, okay? So what's missing? No. No. Okay. Okay, I'm going to be here. So let me do a simulation where this is 10, this is 10, okay? So 10, 10, 10, okay? I run simulation, and I have a adorable cell that's very happy, round, and wiggly. Then I stop simulation. I increase the lambda from 10 to 100, and the temperature from 10 to 100. I should get the same thing, But instead I get this ugly thing here. Okay. Okay. So what is missing here, okay, is that we know your simulation does not only have there's another energy term in the simulation. Okay. Okay. So there's nothing, as Jim said, there's nothing necessarily wrong with the simulation. Some cells do behave like that, and in many senses, this is a much better way to represent cells than what you had before. Okay. The problem here is that you have another energy term that you forgot to turn off, which here is the contact energy that the cells have with the medium. Okay. So the whole logic would be correct if you only have volume as energy term, but you actually have volume and contact energy. Okay. So let me go back to my slides. Okay. So so that's what you had before. And then when you do this, this does not happen because our model actually has two energy terms. You have the volume, which we have been playing with, but also the contact energy that we forgot we to turn off and left that on the black background. Okay. The reason I left the contact energy there is because the contact energy is an energy term in your simulation that ensures, among other things, that your cell will have smooth surfaces. Okay. So it kind of smooths the surface of the cell when you have your simulation. Okay. So that's what one of the things that contact energy does. Okay. It does more than that. We're going to talk about that later. But the energy term ensures that your cell not only satisfies the volume constraint, okay, but also satisfies in a way that makes the cells more cohesive and the surface is smooth. Okay. When you increase the temperature of the simulation, right, and you increase the weight of the volume constraint, what you are doing is actually the change in the temperature and the volume energy went up by tenfold, but the energy associated with the contact energy that makes the cell smooth surface to ensure that the cell has a smooth surface actually went down with respect to the other two, so it decreased in importance. Okay, so what happened is that you effectively made the volume term to be way more important than the contact term of the cell with the medium. So as a result, the cell does not care more about it having rough or smooth boundaries, and the cell ends up having rough boundaries. So does it make sense? So if you now repeat the simulation again, and you also increase the energy of the cell with the medium from 10 to 100, now you should recover what you had before. Okay, it's just that here we have three energies, okay, and we have three energies, okay, and increase two of them, the other one becomes less important. Okay, so you have to see what is the hierarchy of priorities that you have in your simulation. So let me go back to the code. So this is what I had before. And now if I go back here and increase those energies to 100, medium and cell 100, I'm going to explain how this happened later. Okay, now all of them have the same levels. 100 here, 100 here, 100 here. Save, go back to simulation, play. And now this is indistinguishable from what I had before. If I repeat this with one here, and one here, so 1 and 1, those two constraints have the same weight, and they have this relative same weight with respect to the level of noise for system. And a save, now it's still the same result. Okay. Does this make sense? Conversely, if I make, yes, okay, if I make this much bigger than the other one, okay, then I'll have the priority of the cell is just move the surface and doesn't necessarily care about the volume. So then you have the reverse effect, okay? You want the moves to be so surface that actually it prioritize having those right interface here on the sides, okay? Because you are simulating your cell on a square lattice. So this effect here is called the pinning of your cell to the lattice, okay? That's what happens when you're really trying to minimize the surface of the cell, okay, as much as possible. And what happens in the end is that your cell, you look at this and you can clearly say, okay, oh, he's done simulation on a square lattice, okay, because you can see that. Contact energy is complicated. We're going to talk at length about it tomorrow, okay? Here, suffice to say that is a term that induces the smoothness of your cell, okay? Why are the energies and the temperature set to 10 instead of something else? Well, basically because we have to set that to some arbitrary value at the beginning. And usually 10, 10, and 2 here is something that actually makes sense, okay? So it's arbitrary. So what's the meter? The meter is this black region on the bone, behind the cell. It's kind of, it is kind of like a saffron, like the others, but at the same time it's not like a cell. That's because you cannot assign a medium a target volume. You cannot assign it a target surface. You cannot assign it a length constraint. But it's there, and for respect of the spin flips, it behaves just like a cell. Okay. Yeah, the medium could be the fluid around the cells. Okay, so let's do one last exercise. Let's decrease the temperature from 100 to 1, keeping everything else the same, and see what will happen to the cell. Okay. So what I want you guys to do is to set this back to okay, make temperature 1, set this to 100, this back to 10. So all the contact energies will be 10. These are 100, 1,000, and then this is 1. And I'm gonna save this, but I'm not gonna play. I'm gonna just stop here and pause simulation and tell me what's gonna happen to this simulation. It is. Answering the question from Jonathan, it is direct proportion to the surface tension. It's not quite this, but it's, yes. Oh, Tamagno got a static cell. Gilsem also got seen that looks like nothing's moving. Milane, shape of cell barely changes. Okay, so Tamagno, Gilsem, if I pronounce your name correctly, and Milane, does it make sense? Is this expected? You think so? Okay, why? Yes, makes sense. Hopefully it makes sense. Now, why it makes sense? Okay. So let me do this here. I'm gonna play simulation. Oh, kind of, you see that explodes and stops, right? Yes, temperature. Okay, why a very low temperature causes this effect? Let me play it again. Stop. Boom. Stop. Play. Okay. Exactly. So why does this happens? This happens because when you make the temperature very low, what happens to your acceptance function? Okay. Yes. Let's go back here. So this is what happens, right? The cell quickly grows to its target volume, and then it freezes, right? And this happens because when you set your temperature to from 10 to 1, your acceptance function kind of collapses like this. So any small change in energy has already almost zero probability of being accepted. So once it hits the target volume, it's not that the energy change decreases, is that this ratio between how much energy is associated for spin flip with the temperature, right? Not because the temperature is very low, that it's very big, and that causes your Boltzmann acceptance probability to collapse right here. So before energy change, that will give you more or less 50% chance of being acceptance, now gives you 0. Okay. And likewise, if you increase the temperature, energy change, that will give a 50% of chance of being accepted or not, is now 90%. So you're basically accepting everything. Okay, Melanie, got it? Good. So does it make sense? So if that's true, if you now repeat simulation, increase the temperature from 1 to 1,000, what do you expect to happen? Try that and tell me if it's if you got it. Oh, user might made the temperature to be negative. Okay. No, not quite. You not move faster. You do something different. Magnus said all flips are accepted, so you get something that looks chaotic, okay, and fragmented. Okay, so did you do the simulation? Do the simulation, tell me if you got this. Okay, so let me try to do the simulation here. Maybe 1,000 is not enough. So here is how the simulation with a temperature of 1 looks like. Let's make it to 10. So this is what well-behaved simulation. Okay, okay, this is with a 10. Okay, you have some movement, and but takes a very long time to actually relax its shape. If I increase my temperature to 100, so now this is similar to this one. Stop, I play. Now the cell, okay, have more regular shape. Now let's make this to 1,000. Okay, play it again. And now, okay, it looks way more regular. And if I keep increasing the temperature, let's make it 10,000. Okay. It becomes more and more chaotic. It looks like that cell that was moving, right? The red cell that was moving at the end of module 1.1, right? That's one of the things that I did. It's basically you're basically accepting almost any spin flip, but you still start to conserve the volume. So that's what's happening. If you keep increasing your temperature more and more, right? then it becomes more and more chaotic, because the more you increase your temperature, the more shallow your acceptance function will be. Is there, and basically everything can, it's okay, it's fine. So that's what happens. Okay. So I know that this took a very long time. I still want to make a very quick exercise with the surface constraint and length constraint. Okay. So let me stop here. And let's go back here. So what we did, we just finished the exercise with the volume and the volume with respect to the temperature. Now it's time for us to explore the other constraints. And of course, all that constraints have the same relation with respect to the temperature, right, or the noise level. And now let's look at the surface and length constraint very quickly, okay? So the surface constraint, what does it do? It is similar to the volume in the sense that you have ideal target volume and
Julio,
against the current one, and you're trying to preserve your target surface in a two-dimensional cell. That actually means your perimeter, right? But then, and you have a weight, the lambda, that sets the weight of this function with respect to the others, okay? But we have to give a quick remark about how you calculate the surface, how you count surface on yourselves, okay? And basically here in a two-dimensional simulation, the surface is actually the perimeter, and the perimeter is actually the number of sides that your cell, the lattice sides of your cell have with the external medium, okay? So in the case of a cell that's just made of one lattice site, it has four surfaces, okay? 4 sides, 1, 2, 3, 4. If your cell has 4 sides,
Julio, can you hear me?
as a volume, it has a surface of 8 sides, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 2 on each one, okay?
Julio, can you?
And if your cell has now
Sorry, everybody.
21 sites, okay? Sorry, sites and sides, they're very similar, okay? Or 21 sites or 21 pixels. Let's say that. Let's use pixels here. Then the cell will have actually 20 sides around it, okay? Oh, sorry, my audio is off. Okay, so my audio was off and I cannot hear anyone saying anything.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, Hayden.
Okay.
Sorry for that.
it's not a problem, Julio. Just start from the beginning. Take as much time as you need because what you're doing is very important. Don't rush.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go back to the beginning of this slide and talk over it again because we interrupted you from module 3.1.3. And so
Okay.
the recording will be messed up because we talked over you.
All right.
Yeah, we
Okay.
can start module 4 at around 5 o'clock. It's no big deal.
Okay. Okay, so what we want to do now is explore the surface constraint plugin. Okay, I guess this is where we stopped. And so the surface plugin constraint behaves, has exactly the same formulas as a volume plugin. Okay, it's a Hookean-like type of constraint. You have a target value property that's compared against the current target value property, and any deviation is squared. Okay, from it, so it doesn't matter if you're above or below. The weight's the same for your constraint, and then you have a weighting parameter, which is the lambda parameter, that says how much important, that assigns the importance of that constraint with respect to the other constraints that you have in the simulation, if you have more than one constraint in your simulation. So here is the current perimeter of the cell in 2 dimensions is compared against the ideal perimeter of your cell. In the case of simulation 3D, you're going to actually be the surface of the cell compared to the ideal surface of the cell. And the way that that you count the perimeter of the cell in a square lattice is just by counting the number of sides that your cell has with the everything that's all the lattice sites that are not part of that cell. So if in case of your cell is made of just one side, okay, so it has a volume of 1, you have a surface of 4 because you have 1, 2, 3, 4 sides to it. Okay, if your cell is made up of 4 lattice sites, then the surface is going to be 8 because you have 2 on each side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and then if you have a bigger cell, then you have this. So in this case, 21 lattice sites. You have 20 sides to it because 1, 2, 3. You just follow here, and you can count by hand what this number will be. Because you are doing a simulation of square lattice, okay, usually you can approximate the expected number of the perimeter of your cell to be the square root of the volume of your cell times 4. Okay, so that works beautifully here. So square root of 1 is 1 times 4, you get 4 sides. Square root of 4 here, 2 times 4, you get 8 sides. And when you go to bigger cells, even though now you have the edges, okay, you still can expect this relationship to hold more or less the same. And again, this is because of the way that you have, it's because you're modeling your cell on a square lattice. And of course, this is only valid in 2D. In 3D, will be something different. So that's how the surface energy works in CompuCell 3D, okay, or in the cellular plots model, I should say. And we can explore now that as an exercise to see how it behaves, okay? So what I want to do now, I want you to go back to Tweedit, right, to your code, okay? And let's reset your parameters back to what you had before. So let's make our temperature or noise level to be 10, the strength of the volume constraint to be 10, the target volume to be 1,000, okay? Let's turn off the energy plugin to 0. So we make this parameter to be 0. And okay, I would not talk about this, but just let this to be 4. And what I want you to do next is to find where the lambda surface or the surface plugin is, which should be around line 31 and 33. And let's set its lambda surface from 0 to 10 and set the target surface to 126. Okay. So please try to implement all that in your code. And then if you don't want, if it sounds too much to you, or if you don't feel like messing with the code right now, you can, the code for this exact figure is already made available to you on file 1.2.4.zip If you open it, you already have all this configuration ready for you. Okay. So do this and try run simulation, and please tell me what you get. Vincent said that the third git has set a volume of 25. Okay. Because it had those edges that are off. So that form is just approximate. Okay. It's will not be always true. Okay. A neighbor order is something that you don't have to worry about that because you turn off the contact energies. It's something that only plays a role when you talk about contact energies. Okay. So I should have removed that here. So these are left over from old slide. So please try to implement that and run simulation and tell me what you see. Here, so very quickly, if you count the number of sides that are shaded, you actually have 21. So 3 by 5, okay, 15. Okay, got it. Okay, great. So please try to do this. I'm gonna implement this right now in front of you. So what I want to do now is kind of restore this as we had before. So let's make a temperature of 10, right? Lambda volume back to 10. The target volume to be 1,000 when you still want our cell to grow. And here on the have lambda surface. Oh, first the energy between medium and the cell. Let's make that 0 and turn off that energy term. Okay. Yeah, this is already 4, don't have to worry. And now let's find lambda surface and make this 10 and make this value here to be 125. 26, sorry. So these are changes that I'm asking to make. Okay. So I make all those changes here. I save. I'll go back here to the player. I play it. And this is what I get. So, a square bubble, according to Julio. So do you all got some kind of something that looks like a square bubble? Okay. So let me know if you get something that looks similar to this. Okay. And if you get something that looks similar to this, okay, does this shape make sense? You have more than one squared shape. How can that be? Do you have multiple cells in your simulation? Okay, if you got more than one cell, maybe you change something here. Make sure you have 40, 40, 60, 60, and here 20. if you have something like 10 here, what you get is 4 cells instead of 1. Okay. So we want to only explore a single cell instead of 4. There's nothing wrong with 4. You still get the same kind of effect, but let's focus on just 1 cell. So here, okay. Did everybody got 1 cell that looks like this? Yeah, got exactly. Excellent. So let's talk about why it has a shape here, okay? So going back to the slides, okay, I asked you to do this. You did, and you got this square bubble, as your colleague described, okay? And this happens because the other thing that the cell cares about is respecting the volume, okay? Which is, which should be 1,000 cells, and respecting the surface, which is 126, okay? The cell, because we turn off the contact energy, it doesn't care about if your edges are round or smooth, okay? That does not take into account anymore. So the cell is perfectly fine if you have kind of pointed edges in your simulation, okay? So this kind of satisfies both things, right? And you may note that the cell is actually in a little bit of tension, right? Or is a little bit compressed because by your own estimates, okay, let's see, the surface of the cell of a cell of volume 1,000 should be the square root of 1,000 times 4. Now let me grab a calculation. Calculator here and say 1,000. So that is what we have now, okay? So what you can do now, you can try to explore different values of the target surface of the cell, and let's try higher and lower values of that and see what you get. So try to go as low as 60 and maybe as high as 2,000, okay? So do those explorations by yourselves and tell me what you see, okay? What happens if you make a lower target surface, and what happens when you make a bigger target surface? Do you get some kind of competition between one constraint of constraints or not? So Guzamai got a smooth square when she set the target surface to 1. Okay, so that's a very low number. Okay, Peter, you got a very messy shape when the target surface is large. Okay, so Guzemai went make a target surface as small as possible to be 1. Okay, and she get a smooth square. Okay, and Peter made a target surface higher, and he got something messy. Okay, so knows that the target surface of 126 is exactly what you expect if you do the formula. So if you take the square root of 1,000, which is the volume of the cell, times 4, you get 126. So by choosing a target surface of 106, you are exactly, you can satisfy both constraints at the same time, both the volume and the surface constraint. Now, if you make the surface constraints lower, now you have competition between a smaller surface constraint that can only fit a cell that's smaller than 1,000. Okay, if you make your target surface to be bigger than 106, now you're moving to territory that from the surface constraint, you want to have a very big surface area, much bigger than a compact cell of a volume 1,000 sites should have. Okay. So given that competition between your two constraints, are you getting the results that you expect to have or not? 106 is not really a critical value. It's more like a value that both constraints can be satisfied at the same time. Actually, both constraints, well, a constraint of a certain constraint lower than 106 cannot be satisfied with a volume of 1,000. Okay, so going below that, you start to have problems. Okay, because most likely both will be equally unhappy, right? Depending on the weight that you assign to both. Having a target surface higher than 106 and a target volume of 1,000, they can still be satisfied at the same time. But there's a price you have to pay for that. So if you make so let me now show the results, okay? So this collection of results that I have, okay? So if I make 106, both constraints can be satisfied at the same time, and the cell is kind of happy. If you make my target surface a little bit bigger, actually the cell is a little bit more happy because I allow more spin flips to deviate from the shape, and it can get around it. If I make the target surface to be lower than 106, like say 60, half of what you should have, then the cell goes actually a little bit smaller than it is before, and still have a little bit more surface than it would otherwise have. So the cell is under tension. It's trying to satisfy both constraints at the same time and cannot. Okay. Now, if you start to make your target surface much bigger, okay, than 106, let's say 1,000, okay, in this simulation, the cell becomes very fragmented because what you want to have, you want to have 1,000 lattice sites, and you may have 1,000 lattice sites. But not for those 1,000 lattice sites to have 2,000 sites, all those lattice sites must be by their own and not next to another lattice site of the same cell. So what you're inducing here, you're reducing the fragmentation of your cell into many pieces. Okay, so the thing here on the left sounds a little bit, top left sounds a little bit unrealistic. The things here on those two here on the bottom right also sounds realistic, but the thing here at 300 is not necessarily unrealistic, because in the case where you're modeling a mesenchymal cell that have this kind of very spread kind of shape, very regular, you probably have a situation where it does not mind have a perimeter that's much bigger than it would otherwise have if it was completely round. Okay, so playing with the target surface with respect to the volume constraint gives you a way to control the shape that the cell will have in our simulation. Okay. So with those two knobs, you can make the cell to be look more round, like you have here, more square as you have here, or a little bit more regular, but still realistic shape as you have here on the bottom left. Does that make sense? Yeah, so here you can see, right, see, okay, how can I change my parameters to make the cell look like exactly what I want to look like. Do I want the cell to look like this or that? I can do that. Maybe I have simulation that I want my cell to actually really fragment because I kind of simulate apoptosis of the cell. Then one way to reproduce that visually in your simulation will be to move your parameter to this extreme. Then you have your cell dusting off, and then maybe something that you want to have on the simulation. Okay. Yes, in short answer, yes, we're going to talk more about it tomorrow. So of course, when I talk about lambda surface, we only explore the effect of change the target surface. We can also change the lambda surface, the constraint, and that will be another way to kind of shift the cell between this and this extreme, or these and these extremes. Okay, so the lambda surface, the lambda surface here behaves exactly like as the lambda volume here. It's just setting the weight of this constraint, and so I don't think it's worth going over it because more be a repeat from what we had before. What will be worth for us is now to the last bit of this exercise, this module here, would be to talk about now the effects of the length constraint of the cell. So the length constraint is what says the aspect ratio the cell would like to have. So if you want to make your cells elongated, right, the length constraint is where you specify how long the major axis of the cell would be. Okay, so now let's do this last set of exercises. Okay, so the length constraint, again, it behaves exactly as we had before for the volume and the surface, except that here you are setting up a target length of the cell for its major axis, and you compare that with the current length of the major axis of the cell. Okay, but it's exactly the same thing as before, the same kind of type of behaviors. Okay, and if you want to play with the simulation, what you want to do now, we want to let's reset all our parameters before to be temperature of 10, lambda volume 10, target volume 1000. Let's turn off now the surface constraint, okay, and turn on the contact energy of the cell again back to from 0 to 10, and let's leave like this, and then let's set the target length to be, turn on the target length plugin, length constraint plugin, and let's set the lambda length to 5 and the target length to 32. Okay, so, and let's see what you have. So a target length of 32 will be the length of the major axis of a cell of 1,000 lattice sites if it was completely isotropic. Okay, so if you want to make sure that the cell is never elongates, always seeing isotropic, we just set the preferred length of the major axis to be exactly what to be the side of the cell if it was a square. So if you just take the square root of the volume, the target volume of the cell, you get what should be the target length to make this, ensure the cell is isotropic. And then any value that's bigger than that will cause the cell to actually start elongating. So what I want to do now is reset those parameters to be exactly like this. Okay, turn off the target surface, turn back on the contact energy between the cell and the medium. And let's set, to start with, a lambda length of 5 and a target length of 32, okay? Okay. And the background resets are here, okay? Sorry, I should have everything in one slide. They split into two. Right here. So let me change that in the code, and maybe in the code you're going to see everything at the same time. Okay. Again, all those slides have been shared with you at the beginning of the morning before the first session. And if you just want to go directly to the code, the file 1.3.5.zip has the code for this part already ready for you to just open and go with it. So let me go to the code. So what I want to do here is leave this 10. This 10 is 1,000. We're going to turn off the surface by setting this to 0. We're going to turn this contact energy back on. And then on length constraint, I want to make this 5 and this to be 32. Save. So here I have all the things that I changed. And so from here to here are all my changes. Here, and set this one to 0. And what you should got is a round circle fronting here. Yeah. So by setting the target length to be 32 is exactly what you expect from an isotropic cell shape. The target length constraint is saying that's doing nothing. And that's exactly is doing nothing. Okay. So if I just purge simulation here, you still have the same thing as before. It will be the same thing as before because this length here is 32 and this length here is 32 sites. So it's having no effect on your cell shape. What you can do now, you can now start playing with this target length and try to make that bigger and bigger and bigger and see what you get as a result of this. Okay, so your next exercise is to make this bigger and see if you get until you start seeing the cell that start to have a elongated shape. And then once you get a cell that is an elongated shape, you try to measure or guess what to be the length that you get here on the major axis, and see if that matches the length that you set up in your simulation, in your code. And if it does not match, what can you do to enforce it to match? Someone split the 72. Well, see that 500 slider size is more than the size of the space here, because the space is from 0 to 100, right? So the best thing you can get is will be the diagonal here. Okay. Okay, so sorry, here now I have a slide with all the properties that you want to set. Okay. So try make it bigger than 32 and see what you get. Okay. And once you get a very elongated cell, see if the size of the major axis actually match what you have in your plugin. It's not calculated, you make a spin flip and compare what will be the major axis of your cell before and after the spin flip, right? And see if it's actually, and use that for the to calculate the energy of the length constraint. So did everyone got a cell that elongates? Okay. So here is the result that I got when I run simulation. Okay. So if I make that my target slide to 40, which is slightly bigger than it should have, then you see that the cell is not quite round, it's a little bit more oblated. Okay. If I make 60, I got this. If I make 80, I start to get something that's okay, is visually very elongated. Okay. But you notice that a target length of 80 here should be about the size from, can I annotate here on my own? Yeah. So a size of 80 should be something that's about this big here, right? And my cell, in terms of this length, is definitely not 80 large size on this side. So this is the actual aspect ratio that, or the length of my major axis is actually lower than the target one that I have here. Okay. Why does this happen? Yes, you have the volume. You also have the problem that, well, if you have a surface area constraint, that will be something also that will be playing against it, okay? You also have that, but you don't have the surface constraint here, but that would be a way to get it, okay? You cannot satisfy all the constraints. What you have here, you have the contact energy, right? So the contact energy is kind of playing against this one. So if I want to really force to be 80, what can I do to my code to make it that I will be really close to 80, the target volume? What can I do? You can make the contact energy to 0 again. Yes. That would be a way to do. What would be another way to do it? Increase the lambda of the length constraint. Yes. So if you increase the target volume, then the cell will have, yes, you can grow a little bit more, then also that will help reaching its length. So let's go back here now to the code and oh, sorry. have to my clear. Okay, so let's make this 80 and just repeat the simulation. Yeah, this is what I get. What I can do, I can increase the lambda length. And now let me tell you something that you can do. And I think no one has told you before, is that instead of going here the code, changing and seeing the effect, a cool thing that you can do, you can actually change the code live during simulation by going to this model editor panel here. So here you have a model editor panel where I have the length constraint. What I can do, I can expand here those values. Instead of having 80 here, I can reduce that to 40, hit enter, and then you see an automatic change on the values of my cell. Okay, so 40, I can go back here, making 80 again, enter, then it increases, okay. So this is a very cool feature of CompCell, and I can use that to actually enforce 80, so I can make my lambda length from 5 to 50. Or note that if this has a point, here is a real number, you have to keep as a real number. So if I make this 50, now the cell really elongates more. If I make this 500, I enforce a little bit more, and then this is already kind of very close to 80, right? The other thing that someone said is that I can make this back to being 5, right? It decreases a little bit because of the presence of the contact energy. I can go here to contact energy, and energy between medium test cell. I can make that to 0. And now this is what happens. The cell becomes fragmented, but I can rescue that by turning on the surface constraint. So here the surface constraint is 0, right? Or I can make this is set that to 10. Okay, maybe that was too high. Let's make this maybe 1. Okay. The problem here is that the cell touched the boundary, so it kind of lost its shape. But I can do the same kind of thing here back on my code. Okay, I can set that lambda constraint to 5, 126. Okay, 80 here, save, go back, play my simulation. Now, okay, something's happening here. You have a competition between cell constraints. That's maybe this is too high. Let's make it 2. Okay. Okay, the cell becomes like that. Maybe I can make my target stuff to be a little bit bigger, 300. Okay, and that to be something that to make myself a little bit more happy. Okay. Oh yeah, now I got this. Okay. So I can keep playing with those parameters here. So now you have, what you have here is a bunch of knobs that you can use to tune in the shape of the simulation. So here, by using the surface constraint instead of the contact energy, I can get an elongated cell that's a little bit more floppy. It looks a bit more mesenchymal. Okay, it's mesenchymal, very rough surface, but still elongated. Okay, and I can mix and match all the different plugins. So what I suggest you to do now is just to keep playing with all of them together and see what happens if you have this and this, or this and that, right? Or I make the cells to have competing properties, okay? Then you can tune wherever it goes satisfies more one property or the other by playing with the strength of the lambdas within those cells. And using this, you can make yourself to look exactly what you want it to look, right? So with this, I actually will stop this module here, which I know it went over time. Actually, I did talk about everything that I want to do, talk. And please fill up the model questionnaire for this module. Tell us what we did right, what we did wrong. And if you have any questions, we'll be here now. And there will be an extra session later. And please fill up the questionnaire. And I hope this was helpful to you guys. And I'll be around here to answer questions. Okay. Okay, there was a question here from Lampros. Okay, first a question from Julie. No, it should not change because you don't have two cells, right? I'm gonna talk about that situation tomorrow. Okay, maybe later today as well. So yeah, you're exactly right. Will not change anything. Let me read the question from Lampros. Your last paragraph is what exactly happens in Lampros. The calculations ignore the flat surface on the top and the bottom when you're constrained 1 unit in the Z. That's exactly what happens. Yeah, so when you define the Z dimension to be just 1 or flat, then comps already understand that, okay, you're making a two-dimensional simulation, right? And then you adjust auto calculations to actually only count the sides on the XY plane and not on in the Z direction. Please do take time to fill up the pool. So that will be very important for us to know what we're doing right and adjust or the content and the speed as we should go over our modules, okay? And we are here right now. Feel free to ask question and send your question by the chat.
Yes, please do fill out the poll. I think we'll take a short break here once everybody's had a chance to fill out the poll. We'll probably start module 4 at 5:20. That's okay with people? Give people a chance to get up and stretch their legs and find some caffeine. We do have, so the fourth module will be a mostly self-guided exercise. There will be about 10 minutes of intro, and then people can take time to do that exercise. And if you still have lingering questions for Julio about the previous module or about the two modules this morning, we will have time to answer those during the fourth module as well.
Answering Lampro's question about if you can modify the mathematical formulas for the energies or add more plugins to CompCell, the answer is yes, you can do that. There are ways to write C++ code to CompCell and compile and run. Well, CompCell3D is an open source software, so in principle, anyone can go there, download the code and modify, have our own version for itself. But CompCell also does give a way to add your own plugins directly using the 3D on it. So this is something that if another instructor they have is more familiar that can answer, but the short answer is that yes, you can do this. Of course, it's something more advanced that I think we will cover next week.